Sorry I'm late. Okay, so I have something very specific that I want to talk about today. Hang on. I'm absorbing my heat, as it were. I'm not even going to be able to show that on stream, I don't think. Okay. Let me do some adjustments here. There's a particular photograph that's kind of graphic. If you Google this young man's name, unfortunately. One moment. See, am I paywalled here? You listened to that whole 18-minute YouTube video earlier of that dude talking in his garage about me? How was that? Was that interesting? Or because I still haven't watched that yet, honestly. I watched the first few seconds of it, but admittedly I haven't watched it in its entirety yet, as of yet. Let me assemble some other stuff I wanted to show, to demonstrate. Hang on. I'm trying to get more organized with like assembling the stuff before I go live, but it's cool if you guys. It takes people a minute to get here sometimes. What's up, Corrido? How you doing? It's not games right now. I'm going to talk about some political, perhaps you might say, stuff right now. Some governmental type, non-game, like real life, like realsy reals type stuff. Hold on. I don't know to put it. As like I'm trying to be to not have as crucial a potty mouth as I usually have when I do this. Now that I think about it, so I can actually maybe share a majority of it. So hang on. I don't know if I'll be able to share. Hang on. What's this? Okay. Interesting. Hang on.
Embracing everybody, and everybody here said yes, we all agree to that, and that was great. I don't think you really understand what you were saying, what you were agreeing to. For example, Ms. Beltran says she is a Muslim. All right. Buddhist. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Okay, but now let's say we have someone here as a Muslim. All right, and we embrace the Muslim. If you know anything about the Muslim religion, if you're not Muslim, their religion says they need to kill you. Do I have the floor, or does someone else have the floor? You want to address me, so I can address you. I'll do that. Mayor, I was talking and someone interrupted me. Could you please take care of that? And if you read the book, if somebody interrupts you, you can have police remove them.
Okay, no, hold up. Y'all used to do that with Tuck, removing people.
This is not y'all used to.
We're not doing that.
This is
we will not use our police to harass people. That's why I draw the line.
Just
because I was on the receiving end.
I don't comment because
What happened? What happened after that, though? Oh yeah, it's this.
You're talking about embracing everybody, and everybody here said
use our police to harass people. That's why I draw the line. Because I was on the receiving end.
I don't comment because. Do we have a house nigger in here? Do we? Hey, do we? Would she please stand up?
Y'all seen it, right?
The N-word.
I mean, I know I'm
Do we
black.
have, hey,
Oh, what? That was wild. That was my first time seeing that. That's wild. That was fucking crazy. 1, 2, 3. I'm not telling you my name. Hi, hello. But yeah, that's crazy, right? Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So,
Grundy and I.
hang on. Okay. No, quiet. Okay. So, I gotta talk to you guys about Keith Davis Jr. because I feel like this is pretty important. Pretty important. Okay. I'm trying to find like a good, like, comprehensive thing. Compiling. Okay, so distraction. Okay, so while I'm doing that, okay, boom. All right, multitasking. Okay, so this is funny. We're gonna watch this. This is lulz. All right, ready? Here we go.
Aaron Navarro, CBS News. Whip Scalise said today he got vaccinated, citing this Delta variant that's going around, and said he's confident that it's safe and effective. 2 questions. Have you yourself gotten vaccinated, and do you disagree with the Republican whip?
Well, your first question is a violation of my HIPAA rights. You see, with HIPAA rights, we don't have to reveal our medical records, and that also involves our vaccine records.
And do you disagree with Aaron Navarro, CBS News?
Yikes. So you may have seen this on social media recently because it's getting it's making the rounds again. But it's a series of animations about Keith Davis Jr. What'd she say? Hang on. Oh, someone asked her if she was vaccinated, which obviously, oh, you're asking where the guy dropped the N bomb. Hang on, sorry, I was looking at chat. I'm sorry, I was searching. Let me see where the guy dropped the N bomb. I think it's Alabama. I want to say Alabama. I'll consult the Googles to verify. Yep, Alabama. Tommy Bryant in Alabama. He's 76. 76 years old, that lad. That strapping young lad. Just having a good old time. So, about Keith Davis Jr., which is we got to talk about this. Cause I've shared it a few times. If you follow me on Instagram, I've been sharing it for a while. Or talking about it for a while. I've been talking about it on Twitter for a while. Like but I haven't really talked about it on stream yet, I don't think. And it's hard for me to really get super into it because, like I said, I can't even just do what I would normally do, which is Google it and then we could just move from there. Like, I have to literally curate this now because of the photograph that's on here. I can't find anything that says what actually happened. You know what I'm saying? Which is, let's go to Twitter. Ecosia? Weird. I'll give that a try. Here we go. I'll just look at it on Instagram. I'll look at the most recent thing that was doing the rounds on Instagram. Hey, it looks like there's something on the Gun Trace Task Force on here too while we're at it. No. Okay, so check this out, right? Alright. We're gonna read it together, right? We're gonna read it together like this is like second grade or something, and we're doing the class reading, and then afterwards we do the class discussion. All right. So on June 7th, 2015, Keith Davis Jr. was walking down the street in Baltimore, Maryland, which, as if you've ever been to Baltimore, Maryland, it's a thing that we like to do here, is walk down the streets. That's kind of what they're there for. A lot of people think a lot about the car, of course. The car is the symbol of American freedom and whatnot. But people also like to use their feet to get from place to place from time to time, you know. So, oh, whoops. When he heard someone yell, "Gun!" Keith, along with others, started to run, as you probably would if you hear someone yell "gun" in Baltimore, Maryland. You would probably start running. The police were chasing an armed robbery suspect who they lost sight of when they saw Keith running. They started chasing him instead. Keith ran into a garage for safety. Now, here's where it gets weird, all right? Now, here's where you would say, okay, surely this will just result in his safe retrieval from the garage. They will calmly ask him, "Hey, who are you?" If they're intent on stopping him, right? They'll be like, "Yo, we're looking for this robbery suspect, right, whatever." Or do police work, things that you would assume that the police do if the police just like solve and or prevent crimes, right? That's because that's what the police do. So anyway, still pursuing Keith, 4 Baltimore City police officers fired over 40 bullets into the garage. The police would later claim they recovered an unloaded gun from the garage. Keith was struck 3 times, including once in the face, but survived. So that happened. This was one of the first instances of the police shooting someone after the killing of Freddie Gray. The Baltimore City State's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, declined to prosecute any of the 4 officers without even interviewing them. Keith was acquitted of all charges related to the armed robbery after the victim stated Keith did not look like the man who robbed him. Days after he was acquitted, Marilyn Mosby charged Keith with murder, saying that the gun that was found in the garage was used in a murder earlier that same day. Imagine that. Marilyn Mosby has now tried him for robbery 1 time and murder 4 times with no conviction standing. She is now, I keep doing that by accident, she is now planning to try him for a record 5th time in May 2022. As he faces a 6th trial next year, Keith Davis Jr. will become only the 2nd person in U.S. history to be tried this many times for the same incident. said Colin Miller, professor of law at the University of South Carolina, editor of Evidence Prof blog, and co-host of the Undisclosed podcast. So I guess this is all the stuff that, like, just imagine being in jail for all of this, right? Trial number 1, trial number 2, trial number 3, trial number 4, like 6 trials that are all, the trial got acquitted, it was a mistrial, it got overturned, whatever. And you're just sitting at Baltimore Detention Center the whole time because you can't post bail. Every witness, including the police, described a person who was not Keith. Every eyewitness who looked at a photo array did not choose Keith. The DNA tests do not link Keith to the murder victim. The state's own expert testified that the suspected murder weapon was not fired that day. Call Marilyn Mosby and demand she drop the charges against Keith Davis Jr. And I don't know if I should blur that number out, but at any rate, I hope that gets to as many people as possible. And on that note, let's check out this thing they got on the Gun Trace Task Force. The Baltimore Board of Estimates approves $525,000 Gun Trace Task Force settlement. The Baltimore Board of Estimates approved $525,000 payout related to the Gun Trace Task Force Wednesday. Robert Johnson sued the Baltimore Police Department and 2 former members of the now disbanded Gun Trace Task Force after he said in 2014 those officers planted a gun in his car. Yikes. Officers Mamadou Gondo and Jamel Rayam pulled over a vehicle in which Johnson was a passenger on August 27, 2014. During the stop, officers recovered a gun on him. Johnson, who had a prior criminal record, was charged with a firearms offense. He pleaded guilty to 1 charge and spent 4 years in prison as a result. When the officers pleaded guilty to federal charges related to the GTTF in 2017, Johnson withdrew his guilty plea and the state's attorney office dismissed the original charges. Johnson filed the lawsuit in 2019, including Wednesday's payout. The city has paid out $14,375,000. So that's all that's all taxpayer money. Literally all of it is taxpayer money. Your tax dollars at work. Because the police are there to like solve and prevent crimes and not just to like lock people up. Run them down, lock them up. If you can't lock them up, just shoot them. If you just feel like shooting them that day, you just go ahead and shoot them. And you probably get away with it. Probably get away with it. So, let's watch. Hold on. This looks interesting. I'll put this on.
A journey. This has been a journey. It has not been a sprint. It has been a marathon, and it seems to be continuing to be that. Keith is in a cage right now. Right now. It is imminent that we continue to fight. It is imminent because he is a human being. He's a person. Like she said, he's my somebody. Today is my birthday. I'm not with my husband. I'm here with you all. Sunday is my wedding anniversary. I will wake up without my husband still. It should not take this much. It should not have taken 6 years to free a man. It should not have taken 6 years to fight against a narrative from this city when they couldn't be more wrong about my husband, who is the most gentle, the most loving, the most peaceful person I've ever met in my life. And it is why I advocate for him and I fight for him the way that I do. Because I know who he is. And he has been failed by each agency and entity in this entire city. And I will continue to do so until he is brought back home. Because he has suffered from the moment those shots were shot at him and hit him. He languished in prison for a crime that he did not commit. And he has suffered tremendously through 5 trials. Overall, 6. Keith will be the second man in American history to ever be tried this many times.
Wow. So, hold on, I want to read this, but I can't scroll. I think it's because I'm paywalled. That's unfortunate. Oh, no, there we go. Mobile billboards roll through the streets of Baltimore, demanding the state's attorney drop the murder case. Volunteers canvass city neighborhoods, distributing flyers with Marilyn Mosby is lying to you, and unveiled a website to fight the prosecution of Keith Davis Jr. So let's check this website out. This is the story of Keith Davis Jr. This could be any of our stories. In June of 2015, innocent Keith Davis Jr. was cornered by police in a West Baltimore garage where they shot at him 44 times, striking him 3 times, once in the face, the back, and the arm. Although Keith Davis Jr. miraculously survived, he's endured several trials, no lasting convictions, and years of incarceration. Baltimore State Attorney Marilyn Mosby protected the officers who shot Keith and then prosecuted Keith for crimes he did not commit. For more than 5 years, Keith has been the victim of inconsistent testimony, tampered evidence, and unjust trials. What started as a case of mistaken identity in 2015 has turned into a miscarriage of justice by State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby's office, resulting in 5 trials, 2 mistrials, 1 acquittal, 2 overturned verdicts, and a 6th trial to begin in May of 2022. Wow. So he's still going to trial. January 2016 was an armed robbery trial. Did I say January 2016? Keith was acquitted of 15 charges as every eyewitness described a man that was not Keith. The jury only found Keith guilty of constructive possession, the crime of being near a gun. Remember, the gun was never fired. So, just being near a gun is a crime somehow? What? Okay. Murder trial number 1 was in May of 2017. The first murder trial ended in a hung jury with 11 jurors voting not guilty. Wow, so they voted this man not guilty. The only known witness to the murder, who died before trial, consistently gave a description that did not match Keith. Wow, so, okay. Yeah, the right to bear arms, of course. What's up, Sean? Thanks for the like. In June of 2018, well, okay, so, actually... now that I think about it, so if you're a felon, you actually cannot possess a firearm. That's actually and if you have certain terms in your probation, this is why, like, yeah, like the whole prison system is really just a thing where they just like take all of your rights away. And by that, I of course mean make it 30,000 times easier for them to just either shoot you and kill you or take your ass right back to jail. The gun was obviously planted, but the city doesn't want to admit their cops plant guns. Oh, of course. Yeah. Clearly. In February 2020, there is another murder trial that is overturned. The fourth murder trial ended in a guilty verdict that was later overturned due to the judge refusing to allow the appropriate and required pretrial questioning it requested by the defense. Wow. So the judge tried to set him up too? Is that am I reading that correctly? The fourth murder trial ended in a guilty verdict that was later overturned due to the judge refusing to allow the appropriate and required pretrial questioning requested by the defense. Oh, okay. So like the defense wanted to know more about the person they were about to vote guilty on. And the judge was like, nah, you're good. Nah, you're all right. Just guilty or not guilty. It's just another man's life hangs in the balance, but it is what it is. Multiple juries have either acquitted or overturned verdicts in this case, and yet Marilyn Mosby continues to try everything to convict Keith Davis Jr. That's why they can't let him go. Yeah, that happens. And yes, Algal, that's very true. They plant guns very frequently. The police plant all kinds of things, whether it's drugs or hang on, I'll show you something else that was cool. Let's see if I can find this off to the side really quick. Yep. Okay, hang on. We'll read this. We'll finish this though. The gun they claim Keith used in the murder was never fired. Why does this matter? It is not possible for a gun that was never fired to commit a murder via shooting. Duh. The state's own experts acknowledge that the gun was never fired. No gun residue was ever found inside of the suspected murder weapon. And the only bullets and casings from the garage were from police-issued weapons. So the only casings that were outside were from the fucking, like, 44 shots the police officers just fucking mag dumped into the garage door, just pre-firing through the wall. Just fucking, you know what I'm saying, clearing out the concealment pre-fire. Shoot first, ask questions later. What's happening, Mixie? Good to see you. The fingerprint analysis apparently tying Keith to the gun was completed in only 6 minutes. Why does this matter? The fingerprint analyst testifies that she leaves her office, goes to evidence control to retrieve the gun, returns to her office, conducts an elaborate process that involves manually tracing the fingerprint loops in all but impossible 6 minutes. Later, she remarks that she has no notes to describe this process. Wow. Interesting. No DNA evidence linked Keith Davis and Kevin Jones. Despite repeated DNA tests, there is no DNA test that links Keith Davis Jr. to Kevin Jones. During the trials, the state infers that there is DNA evidence in this case that is a link, but that is simply untrue. And it gets worse. In reviewing court transcripts, interviews, and other relevant documents, we've uncovered 209 problems and lies made during the trials of Keith Davis Jr.'s case that prove his innocence. So you can actually select each individual wow. So they'll tell you, okay, the gun was never discharged, yet Keith was charged with legal discharge of the firearm. Mr. Holden describes the gun as silver. Philippa states that the carjacker had on black glasses. Ms. Holden notes that the carjacker did not have on glasses. The state argues that Eskins believes that Keith shot at the officers, but it was ricochet. What? So he was trying to fucking bounce the bullet off the wall. He was trying to rocket jump it like it's Unreal Tournament in 1999. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Like, I don't know. The state's attorney says that Kevin Jones was already dead when they arrived. That's not true. Huh. The state repeats the lie that his DNA is on the Ravens bag. The videos which before were never shown or introduced into court. What is this? You can read the actual transcript of the court session. Wow. I'm not going to do that here, but that's interesting. I might do that by myself later. Fortunately, I am a boomer and I don't know how to get out of here. Okay. So they introduced like a fake video, I guess. The prosecutor interviews the firearms examiners with no other parties present. Wow. The state took a 3D model of the scene in 2015 that was never turned over to the defense. What? The firearms examiners get to choose their own co-examiners. They are not randomly assigned. Wow, that seems kind of stacked. That seems kind of busted. You know, maybe a little OP. That seems kind of OP a little bit. The state did not disclose that the firearms examiners did not actually complete proficiency exams, but that someone just came and marked each of them as satisfactory regardless of the actual exam results. Wow. That's pretty interesting. Donald Long, Kevin's friend and co-worker, indicated that Kevin Jones was a drug dealer, had been shot in the leg previously, and had witnessed his cousin being shot 2 weeks prior to his murder. This information was never provided to the defense. Wow. That seems important to know. As he faces a sixth trial next year, Kevin Davis Jr. will become just the second person in U.S. history to be tried this many times for the same incident. This case, like the case of Curtis Flowers, a Mississippi man who endured 6 trials and spent more than 2 decades behind bars before his charges were dropped, is troubling because of what appears to be strong evidence of police and prosecutor misconduct. The troubling twists and turns of Keith's case naturally raise concerns about the integrity of a future verdict, particularly on the heels of 4 separate mistrials or reversals. Some of the most concerning aspects of his case include a conveniently discovered gun that deflected from a police-involved shooting just after the death of Freddie Gray, a discredited jailhouse informant, dubious forensic evidence, and an independent review board's finding that police not only used excessive force in Keith's arrest, but gave contradictory statements about shooting him. Wow, that's interesting. Despite its reputation, forensic science is all too often like the wild, wild west, and firearms examinations are no exception. It's hardly an exact science. In many cases, we simply don't know if examiners can actually do what they claim they can do, like match a cartridge to a specific firearm, because it's never been proven and because their opinions are rarely challenged without any self-correcting mechanism to root out the problems. It can be a valuable tool when done right, but when mistakes are made, it can and has led to devastating miscarriages of justice. The link to this site is, yeah, I'll post it in Twitch chat. I'll post it on my Facebook really quick. Sorry, I probably should have done all of this before I went live. I'll also put it in my YouTube. So yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride, huh? But it's been a nutty one, hasn't it? Yeah, no problem, Jonna. Thank you. Its link is now posted on my Facebook. I posted it on YouTube. Cool. So if you're watching me live right now, no matter where you are, I'll post it in the live also for this as well in the comments. There it goes. All right. Cool beans. Okay. Let's see if I can find anything more about Keith Davis Jr. really quick. I'll just read a list of tweets. I'm not logged into Twitter right now. Keith Davis Jr. is about to become the second man in U.S. history after Curtis Flowers to be tried 6 times for the same incident. The Keith Davis Jr. team also has a series of illustrations up on the popular Murder Inc. Be More page on IG, which we saw earlier. We saw that earlier if you were here. As of now, it has over 8,000 likes and over 800 comments, of course. D-Ray, this Keith Davis Jr.'s presser happening now, pointing out inconsistencies with Davis's past trials. Points out that Marilyn Mosby Esquire, is that ESQ? I don't know. I honestly don't know what that stands for. Was on the radio in May and said inaccuracies about the case. So WJZ tweet, activists and family continue their call on city prosecutors to free Keith Davis Jr. There have been 4 murder trials. There have been 2 hung juries and 2 overturned convictions. So I guess at least the local news is on board somewhat. Free Keith Davis Jr. till it's backwards. This was live.
To give thanks that we were all able to make it here safely today.
Oh, this
As
is
you all
23
know,
minutes
we're
long.
here, 15, which is an
Hello, everybody. My name is Delphina Yawan, as Ms. Williams said. I'm a community organizer, I'm a restorative practices practitioner, and I'm also a community member of Baltimore City. All of the community work that I do in this city is about imagining and cultivating a world where this case, Keith Davis Jr., and the violence that he has faced is not possible, not just for Keith, but all of us. My work and my commitment is to a world where nobody gets to be shot at by 4 Baltimore police officers and they see no justice. I'm committed to creating a world where no community member can hear about a case like Keith Davis Jr. and not be moved to act. We cannot be silent because, like Ms. Williams said, Keith Davis Jr. is all of us, right? I hold a special place here. I get to be a supportive Keith Davis Jr., but I call them my family member. To Kelly, his wife, and to their 4 beautiful children, who I always bring into this space. Because at the core of it, what people forget is that Keith is also a father, which means for the past 5-6 years, he has been stripped away and completely disconnected from his children. Keith does not get to tuck his children into bed like all of us do. Keith does not get to see his children's first moments like all of us do. Keith's children cannot run into his arms and embrace him and give him a hug like all of us have that opportunity to. He deserves that much. To Baltimore City residents, I urge all of us to once again understand that we cannot remain silent, right? If we allow a precedent to be set with Keith Davis Jr. case, it means that the Baltimore State's Attorney Office can continue to do this again and again and again. Keith Davis Jr. has become the most tried man in U.S. history. How can Baltimore City and our leaders, right, who say that we're committed to justice in a new way, allow for our city to set such a precedent? It is not possible, right? And so what that means is that we must drop the charges, because Keith is somebody. He is our somebody. He is a community member, and we're asking that he be returned to us. Thank you so much.
So clear that we don't need to Baltimore. I'm Dorian McKesson, a civil rights activist, a son of Baltimore, and a citizen of Baltimore. I'm involved in this case because the truth is actually just so clear that we don't need to embellish it. I don't need to do anything to it. I just need to show you. And we care about this case because it is a national case, as Belfina said, that there are few people who have been tried for the same crime as many times as Keith Davis has. And I'll talk about 5 buckets, but again, the truth is so clear, and that's why we have props and things to show you that, like, it's already there. The first is that multiple people lied in this case. That we think about the state's attorney herself, Marilyn Mosby. She went on the radio in May of this year and said that Keith Davis is a convicted killer. That is just not true. She knows, like I know, that there have been 4 murder trials, there have been 2 hung juries, and 2 overturned convictions. He has been convicted before, and they have both been overturned. There is no standing conviction. Why did the Baltimore City State's Attorney go on the radio and say that he is a convicted murderer? That is just not true. The second, we think about Detective Vini in this case. There was a question of how did they even connect the gun between the robbery and the murder? How? Detective Vini got on the stand and he said that there was an officer, Glenn Johnson, who was in the elevator. And Officer Glenn Johnson told him that, you know what, I saw a gun in my case that you should think about. Here's the best part of that story. Officer Glenn Johnson doesn't exist. What does that even mean? How are we still here? But those are just a handful of the things that are just outright untrue in this case. The second is that there's no real evidence linking Keith Davis to this at all. So prosecutors in a couple of the cases have said on the stand that Keith's DNA is on the Ravens bag, if you know the case. That is also not true. The DNA test comes back inconclusive. That is what the test said, and that is actually what the state's evidence also says. They did what's called probabilistic genotyping that says that there's a probability that Keith's DNA might be on the test. It is a weak probability, and what we learned from experts is that there's a probability that a random person walking down the street, that their DNA is also on the bag. It is not true that Keith's DNA is on that bag, and they have said that as truth. The DNA test from the state does not say that. Every single eyewitness in this case, every eyewitness, including the police, give a description of a person that is not Keith Davis. That is just true. One of the officers who runs and says that he never loses eyesight, he gives a description of a guy with braids. Keith has a fade. The other officer says that the guy I'm chasing has glasses on, dark glasses. Keith didn't have glasses on that day. The guy who gets carjacked says that the person who carjacked him had plaids. That's not Keith Davis. Every single person who sees a photo array in this case and is asked to choose the person who is the suspect does not choose Keith Davis. Every single one of them. Now the third is that the evidence, like what the state's attorney's office has said is the best evidence in this case, is also flimsy. And again, you don't need to believe me. It is actually just in the transcripts. I'll show you one, and one is, this is the testimony that is between the firearms examiner and the lawyer. And we can just go over it. So again, I'll repeat my question. Your testimony is you measured. As in measured the shell casings to match them to the gun. He says, no, ma'am. You did not measure anything on the shell casings? No, ma'am. Okay, so you eyeballed it? Yes, ma'am. The idea that somebody could be facing 50 years in jail and the firearms examiner eyeballed it, I mean, that just can't be good enough. At a different part of the trial, when they say, did you take notes? He says no. Did you take photographs? He says no. How are we here? I don't have this pulled out as a pullout, but the fingerprint analyst too. Did you take notes? She says we're too busy in Baltimore City to take notes. How? She describes an elaborate process of matching the fingerprint to the gun. And then on the stand, the lawyer says, well, it looks like you went to evidence control, picked up the gun, went back to your office, did the process, and took it back to evidence control in 6 minutes. And she's like, I guess that's true. And you're like, again, how are we here? The best evidence in this case is no evidence at all. And one of the last things I'll say is that the reason that we care about this is not only about Keith Davis, but it is about how many other people in this city are Keith Davis too. How many other people are facing charges because the fingerprint examiner didn't have time to take notes? How many other people are facing charges because the ballistics expert eyeballed it? What does that even mean? So the demand, as Ms. Williams said, is to drop the charges. That is the first demand. There also needs to be a deep look into the forensic practices of the Baltimore City Police Department. How many other people are facing incredible sentences when the truth is actually just clear? And the very last thing I'll say is another pullout that we have. And this to me is always the most shocking thing of the entire case. And I'll just go right here. Do you have any evidence whatsoever that indicates that the K5, which is the gun in question, was fired? No, ma'am. How is there a murder if the gun was never fired? I don't know. Now today, what we have released in the timing, of this press conference is we've cataloged over 200 inconsistencies, lies, and problems across all 5 trials. You will see when you go to the website, keithdavisjr.com, you will be able to see not only a description, but you'll be able to click and see the transcript for yourself. We have nothing to hide. The truth is actually damning enough in this case. I'll stop here. I'll turn it over to Kelly Davis, the wife of Keith Davis Jr.
Thank you guys for being here. This has been a journey. It has not been a sprint. It has been a marathon, and it seems to be continuing to be that. Keith is in a cage right now. Right now. It is imminent that we continue to fight. It is imminent because he is a human being. He's a person. Like she said, he's my somebody. Today is my birthday. I'm not with my husband. I'm here with you all. Sunday is my wedding anniversary. I will wake up without my husband still. It should not take this much. It should not have taken 6 years to free a man. It should not have taken 6 years to fight against a narrative from this city when they couldn't be more wrong about my husband, who is the most gentle, the most loving, the most peaceful person I've ever met in my life. And it is why I advocate for him and I fight for him the way that I do. Because I know who he is, and he has been failed by each agency and entity in this entire city. And I will continue to do so until he is brought back home, because he has suffered from the moment those shots were shot at him and hit him. He languished in prison for a crime that he did not commit, and he has suffered tremendously through 5 trials, overall 6. Keith will be the second man in American history to ever be tried this many times. When I think about the accomplishments that I wanted to be there to witness of my husband, that is not one of them.
Somebody's phone's going off in the background.
I ask that when you
They're mad as shit.
write your stories, when you inform the public and the press, that you keep this in mind. These inconsistencies come from the state's case. For 6 years, I've just needed people to listen to me, to hear, to see for themselves. And I'm so grateful to the support that I now have, and I'm so grateful for the people who look with their own eyes, who did not take my word for it, because after all, I'm just the wife, right? It's easy to discount, but saw for themselves. And like DeRay has said, the truth is here. There's nothing else. It's the strongest thing possible. So now I'm asking that you all also see with your own eyes and stand up, so that we are not doing this 20 years later when Keith is free. That we're not outside at a podium after he is sat in jail for decades. Because right now, this is happening right now in front of you. He is a person, he is a husband, he is a father, he is a son. We miss him, we need him, we love him, and we will never stop fighting until he's home with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, DeRay. Thank you, Delphina. And we thank you all for your continued support.
Yes, so it was a slow start, but now Keith has, with each trial, actually, incidentally, Keith has gotten more momentum. Every time he has been tried, his support and his team has grown, because people can see that this is no longer about justice, this is a persecution. And so the support has been consistent, and it continues to grow. And now that we have these billboards and we have all these initiatives taking place, more information is out there, so I know that it will continue to grow. But I'm so extremely grateful, because I could not do this alone. I needed the support of the public, of the community, of people like DeRay, to just kind of look and say, okay, no, this is wrong, and be willing to stand up, because there are so many other people that will tell you that this is wrong and still do nothing. So absolutely, we've had tremendous support, and it consistent, and in a way, consistently trying him is almost as you're raising his cause. It's almost as if he's kind of martyrhood at this point, because he is being persecuted in this way. And I think that where everyone wants to push their own narrative of who he is and
absolutely key,
what his life means, I think the community and the supporters and the people who have rallied around him are sending a strong message that justice for Keith Davis Jr. is justice for Kevin Jones, and his life matters, and this matter just like anybody else.
Any other questions? Well, again, we thank you all for being here. We thank you all for your frank reporting.
And that was that. So that concludes the political stuff, I guess you could say, if that's what you want to call it. I'm gonna play video games now. That's what I mean by that. I'm probably not gonna stop talking about Keith Davis Jr., but I will be playing video games now. I want to play Hunt, so if you want to watch me play Hunt Showdown and continue to talk about Keith Davis Jr., just stick around. I'm gonna end the stream now. You can refresh the stream, and I will be gaming. So